Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time this afternoon and your interest in the Southbridge Public Schools. Today, we're attempting a virtual public hearing to share information about our fiscal year 21 budget proposal for the Southbridge Public Schools. I'd like to thank everyone who's helped make this happen at our local access channel and here at the Southbridge Public Schools, Mr. John Parent and technology folks. Please bear with us as these are difficult times and we are trying our best to present the public with information while also dealing with the COVID-19 outbreak. So today we have a series of slides that we'd like to share with you and information about the budget. Joining me in our presentation will be Mr. Seth Racine, who's also the District Director of Finance, and I thank him as well for his time. So the budget that we're presenting today is based on a 3% total increase in local contribution. If awarded, this would represent approximately 1% increase per the past 3 years in the school district's budget. I say that because unfortunately we've had 0% increases for the tenure, for my tenure here in the school system. And so we're asking for a small increase as we continue our important work to improve the school district's performance. The budget this year will support an elementary dual language program expansion. The program currently serves children in grades kindergarten through 3, and we're proposing an expansion into grade 4. That allows our Southbridge children to become bilingual and biliterate in English and in Spanish. The budget also supports the expansion of Southbridge Academy, adding grades 6 through 8 to the existing 9 through 12 program. Southbridge Academy is a therapeutic day program that has improved so dramatically in the past few years that we're now receiving requests from surrounding communities for students to participate in the school as tuitioned-in students. The budget also seeks to be fiscally responsible, so we first examined all the existing positions and expenditures and eliminating those that weren't necessary before moving forward in requesting additional funding. Overall, this budget actually reduces 16 positions from our current status. It also is built upon a significant amount of state support, both from Chapter 70 funds and from special grants that have been provided to the town of Southbridge as a result of its receivership status. At this point, I'd like to turn over the presentation to Mr. Seth Racine, who will present some more of the financial particulars of the budget. Mr. Racine?
Thank you, Dr. Villar. So the first section on the next slide is we're going to be talking about the revenue that Southbridge receives for education. As you can see here in this bar chart, it shows revenues for the Southbridge Public Schools over the last 4 years. For FY2021, the next school year's budget, we are requesting $29,313,020 in our general fund appropriation from the town, as represented in this bottom large bar. This is an increase of $853,000 from the prior year. In addition, we're also estimating that we will receive approximately $4.69 million in grants. These grants are divided into 2 parts: recurring grants, shown here in orange, for about $2.8 million, which is about a $16,000 increase from the prior year, and in the gray for non-recurring grants for about $1.87 million. It's actually a decline of $176,000 from the prior year. These non-recurring grants are associated mainly with turnaround and with the receivership that go to fund key strategic initiatives to help turn around the district. And as you will see on the next slide, last fall, after many, many years of debate in state government on Beacon Hill, the state legislature signed into law by Governor Patrick was a new education funding bill called the Student Opportunity Act. This is the first major financial overhaul since the 1993 Education Reform Act. And as part of this, they said that we need to make sure that we provide more funding, especially to students in poverty, to English learners, as well as to the general population at each of our grade levels. And with this comes both a combination that local municipalities and supported through additional state aid will be doing this as we dramatically increase the amount we spend at a minimum per student over the next 7 years. So in order to show you this impact of how much we're showing you is this orange bar chart here, the orange line, which shows you the average per pupil amount at a minimum Southbridge is to spend on public education. And so for next year, that amount minimum increases from $13,260 to $13,673. And this is just for the general fund. This doesn't include grants, federal and state grants associated with it. From the bar chart, unfortunately, the overall enrollment in Southbridge for students attending public education, that includes both the district as well as choice and charter schools, actually slightly went down. So the total cost at a minimum went down just very slightly from $30,836,000 at a minimum to $30,505,000. We expect that these numbers, the average per pupil amount, will be dramatically increasing in the next 6 to 7 years. And if we turn to the next slide, here is actually the enrollment for Southbridge students that choice out of the district to attend other schools as well as neighboring charter schools. And what we've actually seen over the last 3 years is that the Southbridge Public Schools has done a better job of recruiting these students as this number has declined in 2018, going from a high of 333 students down to this past year, 327. The green bar chart shows you how many students are using school choice to attend other school districts. And the blue shows you how many students are attending a neighborhood charter school. And you'll see this increase in FY 2018 because there was a new charter school that opened in neighboring Sturbridge. So despite the fact that this charter school has actually been growing over the last few years and expanding, we've been able to recruit more kids back to the district, and these overall numbers have declined. So if we move to the next slide, this shows you, in terms of state aid, communities receive both aid in the form of receipts, as well as they pay back the district in form of assessments. And so this shows you for receipts related to education, as well as assessments related to education for the town of Southbridge. So for receipts for next year, according to the governor's budget, Chapter 70 state aid for education and charter tuition reimbursement are both increasing for next year in combined about $328,000. Unfortunately, the assessments that are applied to Southbridge for education are actually increasing at a greater rate. So as mentioned before, school choice continues to decline. So we see this number going down by about $15,000. And the charter tuition assessment, so this is the cost associated with those students who are attending the new charter school, actually is increasing by about $400,000. And this amount is greater than the state aid we're receiving above. So for a net decrease of about $62,000 in education aid to the town of Southbridge. Moving on to the next slide. But it's not just about the local appropriation. It's important to also show you that the Southbridge Public Schools receives several $1,000,000 in recurring and non-recurring grants. And so for recurring grants, these are grants that we actually expect to receive every single year. And you'll see this, we receive about $2.8 million in recurring grants that are usually flowing from the federal government in the forms of Title I, Title IIA, for students with disabilities, with IDEA. But then we're also very fortunate because as part of receivership, we receive a number of non-recurring grants shown here in red that have actually been very high over the last few years, but unfortunately are declining next year. We're expecting this to go down from about $2.04 million to $1.87 million. On the next slide, we want to show you about expenses. So where does our money go? It's actually just to a few categories. So of the $29 million general fund grant that we talked about, 92% of our money goes to people, buses, buildings, and out-of-district placements. So 67% go to our staff salaries, including another 2% for benefits, which does not include health insurance. That's even beyond that. Special education tuitions for students who are served in out-of-district placements is about 9% of our budget. And then 11% of our budget goes to buses for transporting our students both within the district as well as out of the district, and then a little bit more for utilities and maintenance. But when you actually look at the overall amount for supplies and sort of other expenses, it's actually a very minor fraction compared to the overall budget. And so as we go to the next slide here, we're going to talk about an instructional focus. So let me turn it back to Dr. Villar.
Thank you, Mr. Racine. I very much appreciate that clear presentation. As we move forward on this portion of the budget, we're really talking now about the essential district-wide improvement plans. And we've been very focused on three key areas: climate and culture, improving of reading instruction and language arts, and improved mathematics. In each instance, we're trying to use data to monitor our progress. We've been working with external partners, for example, Hill for Literacy, to improve literacy instruction in grades K through 5. And this graph demonstrates that nearly all of our students come into school as non-readers. However, by January, you can see that 50% of our students are at or beyond the grade level expectations, and with an additional 30% of our students are now at the cusp of achieving their grade level expectation. This has been dramatic improvement from past years. This graph shows that year-over-year improvement for students in grade 1. In fiscal year 19, we started the year at 29% of our first graders at grade level expectations. In fiscal year 20, we had 43% of our students who passed grade level expectations for September, and another 19% were on grade level, making more than 60% of students on track. This improves by mid-year, showing that the increase of students on track and on target. And again, this builds year over year and is a critical component of our improvement as we move forward. The district has made improving mathematics an important priority, and we've implemented a new math program in grades 6 through 12. We continue to provide teachers with ongoing professional development. And to measure our progress, we use a tool that's called the Instructional Practice Guide. I'm pleased to show that our middle school teachers have made significant progress over the course of the year, improving in nearly every measured category of the Instructional Practice Guide. Our work to implement positive behaviors interventions and supports, also known as PBIS, is aimed at improving the climate and culture of our schools. These tables reflect our progress as measured by two validated measures that are used frequently across the country in districts that are implementing PBIS. The table to the left reflects an instrument called the Tiered Fidelity Instrument. These data indicate that Eastford Road, Charlton Street School, and Southbridge Academy have all implemented the first phase of PBIS with a high level of fidelity. The table on the right reflects a team assessment that is developed and utilized by teachers. It's a much quicker assessment and gives us actionable data quickly at the school. These data indicate that there's been considerable progress at all schools and exceptional progress at ERS, Eastford Road School, West Street School, Charlton Street School, and Southbridge Academy. Another measure of school climate is the careful analysis of student discipline referrals. Referrals are generated by classroom teachers when they encounter a behavioral issue with a student. These data are very important and carefully recorded. Teams of teachers at each school review these data regularly and develop systems to continuously improve the school climate. For example, this table reflects the referral data from Eastford Road School. The average number of referrals drops from a high of 6 referrals a day in October to an average of 2 per day in January. This suggests that the team learns about the needs of every student and adapts and they ensure that they are successful in putting interventions into place for students. I've included the same data for each of our schools. However, in the interest of time, I am going to move quickly through these slides. I should note that this slide and presentation will also be available on our website. This budget supports the Middle School Student Support Center. The creation of the center was one of the more impactful changes made at the middle school during the current school year. The center was launched in January and it serves essential response to student behaviors. And it's a first line of changing negative behaviors, reducing out-of-school suspensions, and perhaps most importantly, improving school climate. The Student Support Center seeks to teach students how to be successful in dealing with problems. It also holds students accountable for their actions. The Student Support Center also coordinates restorative conversations between students and teachers, helping to resolve underlying concerns and restoring the relationship between the student and the teacher. By addressing the cause of misbehavior, we are seeking to break the cycle of disruption. Since its implementation, there's been a dramatic improvement in the climate at the middle school. This slide demonstrates that the Student Support Center has had an immediate impact on more than 50% of the students who have been sent there. For these students, it took only one visit to reset them onto the correct path. For another 24% of students, it took several visits to get back on track. And there's also a group of students for whom the Student Support Center had not been impactful. Many of these students need more therapeutic educational environment, and that's one of the reasons why this budget also supports the expansion of Southbridge Academy to include students in grades 6 through 8. Southbridge Academy has continued to improve its outcomes since becoming a therapeutic day school. It will now serve nearly 60 students in grades 6 through 12, providing both academic and social-emotional instruction. This budget supports the expansion of this school by moving staff from the middle school to the academy. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, this budget proactively reduces existing positions first, prior to seeking additional funds. 15.5 or nearly 16 positions have been eliminated as a cost savings measure. Some of these positions were eliminated because of reduced enrollment. Others are eliminated because of programmatic changes. This budget supports instructional initiatives by shifting resources to our most high leverage initiatives. The budget calls for an increased reading support in all the elementary schools, adding reading coaches to an already successful reading program. The budget grows our successful dual language program to grade 4, adding English language and Spanish language teachers to the West Street School grade 4 team. The budget continues to support our efforts to improve the climate, culture, and academic outcomes of the middle school, maintaining the school engagement officers and deans of students. For the past 2 budget cycles, the school engagement officer position has been added and then cut. We need to keep them to maintain stability and to build upon successes. The budget also seeks to restore positions that have been lost over time at Southbridge High School, while also improving its climate and culture. Additional counseling, a consistent school engagement officer presence, adding science, social studies teachers, and additional unified arts teachers. Finally, this budget shifts our staff from our middle school and adds staff to support the expansion of the Southbridge Academy. All important improvement efforts. In the fiscal year 18, Southbridge Public Schools employed 388 people. During the current school year, we're down 32 people since then. This budget will once again result in fewer people employed to help in the education of Southbridge children. We'll be down an additional 4 FTEs. While our budget increases have been zero for several budget cycles, the cost of doing business has increased. This causes fewer resources to be available each year. This budget continues the important trend that I've established of focusing resources in schools, not in central office. This budget adds 8 people to our schools while reducing 4 people from our central office services. For the past few budget cycles, the district has been allotted funding for capital projects. We've been asked to outline how we might utilize approximately $300,000 each of these past budget years. The need to invest in technology has been urgent and continues to be so, only magnified by the demands of remote learning during the COVID-19 shutdown. We also have urgent roof repairs that are necessary at West Street School. And along the short list of capital needs that you see listed here, we also have sent extensive building repair requests that were developed from a town-produced study of our building and facilities. 4 out of 6 of our schools utilized require significant renovation. We anticipate the cost of those renovations could be tens of millions of dollars. These costs are too high to be included in any operating budget for a municipality and certainly wouldn't be part of a small capital list such as the one I have here. But they are typically required that municipalities would bond for the repair. That would be a long, ongoing process, and we are only now beginning that conversation and hope for support from our town council as we examine the best way for Southbridge to move forward with those building repairs. The shutdown due to COVID-19 has resulted in some unexpected financial costs and some savings. We continue to receive state guidance as to ongoing costs, such as staff salaries, special education costs, and other contract providers. Prior to this hearing, we received several questions that I'd like to answer now as they absolutely fit into our presentation. One is, why are maintenance staff and janitors receiving hazard pay? When the schools shut down back on March 13th, first priority of the district was to figure out how we could maintain our food service program. Many of our children and families in Southbridge rely on the meals that are produced by this federally funded program. In order to accomplish this, I needed staff. Therefore, with the uncertainty due to COVID-19, the concerns that my employees had for their own health, wellness, I negotiated terms with our food service employees, our maintenance employees, and our custodial staff. This is commonly referred to as impact bargaining. Our negotiation, due to significant change in their work environment, arrived at an agreement that each employee would receive a stipend during the closure. We maintain a minimal crew necessary to keep our buildings clean and safe, all the mechanical systems running, and meals produced regularly. This means we have maintained 4 maintenance staff, a custodian each day in each of our buildings, 12 food service employees working at 4 different sites. My priority remains in ensuring that our students and their families are able to receive meals each day. I am grateful that my staff continues to report to work and help fulfill this important objective. To date, we've been distributing 1,400 meals each day on average. A second question that we received in preparation for this budget hearing asks about and raises a particular concern that I share about the inequity and the lack of technology and for families to get online and complete learning assignments. From the get-go, first day on March 13th, we began to work on developing paper-based remote learning packets for our students because we recognize that there's disparity in access to technology across the district. Unfortunately, as a school district, we do not possess enough laptops, or what we refer to as Chromebooks, to distribute to all of our students. In fact, nearly 50% of our Chromebooks don't have the video capabilities necessary for remote learning. And we're down at least 1,000 Chromebooks, as we have about 1,100, and we have nearly 2,000 students. So we've relied on paper sources, and we began distributing them at Charlton Street School, West Street School, Eastford Road School, directly at Brookside Terrace, and at the Big Bunny Market. These documents are available also online. Each of the learning packets we've had now distributed to are located at each of these sites, and they contain educational materials that certainly will keep our students quite busy for a long period of time. Historically, we've received capital funding that does assist with the purchase of technology, but it's certainly not kept pace. The district has 2 employees to support 2,400 users of IT. I've sought assistance from the state, and I've been told that we may receive an additional 150 Chromebooks being donated by a source. That certainly will be helpful, but we have a large gap to go if we're going to provide each of our students with a Chromebook at some point in the future. So I'm now taking a look at our current operating budget, trying to determine if we have savings as a result of COVID-19 shutdown, and we're seeking ways to try to promote technological use in our families. We don't have all the answers at this moment, but we're certainly looking to find a way to dramatically improve our technology footprint. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this presentation. I hope you'll reach out with any questions, and please continue to support the Southbridge Public Schools.